Hey!
Hi.
Hey.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
What a morning. Oh, my God.
Yeah, what's going on? I just came from my hyperbaric tank, and it's so cool in there because it looks like one of those hypersleep space chambers. But when I went in this morning, it seems to work like a space-time travel chamber. Because I went in this morning, and Stonewall was suing LGBT Alliance. And I came out when I thought it was still this morning, and now Stonewall is no longer suing LGBT Alliance.
Yes.
So,
welcome to the future, Arty. Welcome. We have changed our metabolism and are now superhuman transient things. Yes, it was...
Don't say transient, I'm triggered.
I was literally writing it on Substack. Oh, they've all done this. And then Stonewall pulled out. I was like, you know, I mean, it's like, remember we were saying last week, or just the other day, Helen, because things are happening so fast that we have a mess we're in every other day now. but like, do you remember we were saying, you were saying that, you know, is this a new tactic, blah, 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 blah. And it just shows, doesn't it, this morning that this is just scrambling. They are not you know, my friend Sarah just said to me, absolutely true thing. She said, when, you know, it's one of these situations, they're one of these organizations, when everything is going fine, they're fine, and no one really notices anything about them. But as soon as things start to go wrong, you realize the absolute incompetence of the people behind
the policy created in shadows can't survive the sunlight, I think, is what we were saying.
Yes, but also,
and I think, but more this, sorry, is that the fact that they haven't, you know, they cannot stand any challenge. You know, they've had this unfettered power for so long. They've had no challenges. One tiny org has popped up, you know, with two women at the helm, and the only thing that they can think to do is try and silence them. That's the only tool they have in their toolbox, is silencing. There is no argument, there is no reason, there is no, well, we can all live together, we can advocate for trans rights, you can advocate for LGBT rights. It's, no, they're taking our money. This massive consortium of established charities,
Gender GP,
is saying, look, we want the monopoly on this money. I mean, that's one of their arguments. Did you see that, Arty?
No,
it's actually one of their arguments. They're saying there could be a sort of a loss in funding for Mermaids because public bodies and the public might give their money to the LGBA Alliance instead, and this is detrimental to Mermaids.
What?
Like, that's one of the arguments. Yes, and it's such a short-sighted one, given...
That's like saying Pepsi's not allowed to exist because you might buy a Pepsi instead of a Coke. Coke refuses to allow Pepsi to exist, kind of thing. Like, what?
Or Save the Children can't exist because Amnesty needs the money. But it's even more than that. I mean, that in itself is quite extraordinary. But the real short-sightedness of it is that these charities together, Gendered Intelligence, Mermaids, Stonewall, they're far more likely to be a drain of funding from each other than the Venn diagram of Mermaids donators and LGBT Alliance donators like this. There's
very true. Very true.
But those charities altogether are absolutely going to be fighting for each other's funding. And to use this as one of the arguments is the most astonishingly short-sighted thing. The whole thing is.
But it's like I was saying, it's, you know, it's the reflexive kicking of a dying horse, you know? I mean, it's just all they know how to do. They've only ever had one, they've only had like one very narrow strategy, which is lie to your friends, right? And attack your enemies. That's all they've been doing for 5 years, and it's worked. It's worked.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a sign of how the left is really, because the right, I feel like it's when the right went off the rails and became unhinged, the left sort of the yin and the yang fell apart, and then the left became unhinged. They have no one to push back against them rationally, and they've just become completely irrational. Or that's how it started, maybe. But now it's just that the left is the very muscle you need to know how to think critically and defend your viewpoints. They have never exercised that muscle before, you know?
Yes.
Everyone else is bad. Everyone who disagrees with us is evil and bad. We don't have to actually justify why or how. We've never had to do that before, you know? So they're just whining like babies now that there are criticisms of leftist viewpoints or viewpoints that they believe to be left that are valid. They're just like, they don't know how to handle this. They're just panicking.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's striking that the BBC still will not do a serious investigation of what's been going on or get a debate going. I guess they're still, Stonewall champions, and I guess that they're still following the no debate credo. But surely they can't ignore it for much longer. You know, I mean.
But again, I think there's even more here. Just sort of having a quick look at Twitter and people's takes, and I think there is some excellent takes in that you've got a straight man at the beginning of Pride, i.e. Mom, and what's he doing? He's trying to bring down a charity for LGBT people.
LGBT people.
LGBT people. This it's
actually, you could even say it's LGBT because obviously the LGBA Alliance would stand up for trans men or trans women who are same-sex attracted.
That's what I've always said. There were transsexuals there at the founding of the LGBA Alliance. There are transsexuals who support the LGBA Alliance, and the LGBA Alliance supports transsexuals. Same-sex attraction is a different it's a different category of thing than your gender identity, or, you know, you can still be a homosexual and a transsexual at the same time. You know?
Exactly. You know,
Tiana
Orlander is such a wonderful example of that. She's a trans woman. She's like, depending on how you look at it, I'm also a gay man. Take your pick. You know,
yeah.
I think so enlightened.
That's very true. That's
and
very
brave. True. And brave. You know, like one of the things that I find has been, you know, down through the years, so insulting and annoying is looking at our trans allies, you know, having to make statements like this, which must be quite painful for them because they suffer from dysphoria and so on. And yet they have to do it again and again and again because they're being faced with people who just do not believe in biological reality. You know, I mean, it's if you want to trigger someone's dysphoria, have them have to say over and over again,
and their biological
I'm a man.
Reality. It would be nice if we all acknowledged that biological reality was there, and we didn't have to censor it and talk about it and argue it and defend it. We could just acknowledge its existence tacitly and move on.
What they've done is they've put it at the center of the agenda. You know, another thing that I just want to quickly mention is this is fantastic news that Mermaids have come out into the open like this. I actually thought Mermaids would be the first to fall because I think Mermaids is I think they're basically a combination of parents with Munchausen syndrome and homophobic parents, and I think that I would actually argue that the whole of Mermaids is a rear guard kind of defense of what Susie Green did to her child, who, let's remember, she first decided was trans when he was 4 years old because he played with girls' toys. And again, I urge people, please watch the TED Talk. Please watch Susie Green's TED Talk, where she admits to this. There is no other explanation given for her decision that her child was trans. He liked girls' toys. The husband didn't like the fact that the kid liked girls' toys. And so from the age of 4 years old, you know, they started working on him, you know, that's what happened. And any other kind of, if you've bamboozled yourself into thinking that there's something else going on, well, you know, it's time to wake up. It's time to wake up because so many kids are going to be damaged by this, you know?
Well, yes. And I think, and this court case, it really does say so much, doesn't it? That they're a charity, but all of these charities, they're not raising money for their cause. They're raising money to try and bring down another charity, a tiny charity that they view as a rival for their funding. That itself shows, and the accusation that LGB Alliance is actually politically motivated is the most astonishing one. It's such a short-sighted. It would be such a Pyrrhic victory for them, because then everything could be turned against them and used. But not just them, other charities. I mean, if I were LGBA Alliance, I'd be contacting Eton right now and getting their very best lawyers on the case, because none of these big charities are going to want this to win. None of them. So I would be trying to get the very best lawyers.
That's very interesting.
Not ones that use phrases like whatever sweet nothings the so-called LGBA Alliance whispered into the ear of the Charity Commission. This is on their crowdfunding page, and no one thought to say, hang on, should we really be accusing the Charity Commission of being bought using incredibly sexist language? Amazing.
Yeah. That's great.
It's just amazing.
I was in the tank during that, so this is like reaction face, right?
You have to explain the tank.
That's the crowd justice page.
Arty, surely you have to explain the tank.
Now I did it. I sort of came out the other day on Twitter, and I have to go.
Oh, did you?
Tank for my ear. It's an ear thing. It's
apparently it could be a virus. They were saying.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Well, that's great. No, another thing to worry about. Well, I'm glad that, as long as you can hear me interrupting you so you stop talking, Arty, then that's all I need.
Isn't it amazing, Helen's point about what if it would be a Pyrrhic victory? I never even thought of that, because of course it's never going to happen. But imagine if they succeeded in shutting down a lesbian and gay charity. Wouldn't everybody wake up and be like, wait a minute, what's wrong with having a lesbian and gay charity?
But it's great.
There's no argument. It's just like they're just a charity for lesbians and gays. That is just for lesbians and gays and bisexuals. But I mean, you're allowed to have a charity just for lesbians. You're allowed to have a charity just for gays. You're allowed to have a charity just for lesbians and gays and say screw off to bis. Not that we would, because we love you, bisexuals. But you're allowed to have a charity for whatever group you want to have a charity for. And the idea that you're just not allowed to have lesbians, gays, same-sex attracted people without attaching, autogynephiles.
Every trans charity could be
come on, it's insane. Stonewall was a charity for lesbians, gays, and bisexuals until what was it, 6-7 years ago?
2015, apparently. They attached
6 years ago. They're literally saying that they themselves were 6 years ago is now the thing that is so hateful it's not allowed to exist. Like, how psychotic is that?
It's great. I mean, that's
what other gay and lesbian groups are going to be banned. Are you allowed to have a lesbian and gay bowling league without autogynephiles being invited? Are they going to go after the lesbian and gay?
Also, every single trans group can be attacked on those same lines. As you say, it's crazy. But I mean, I kind of this morning I thought, I must collect all my stuff and send it out there in the hope that journalists see it. All the stuff we've been shouting about for 5 years, 4 years? I don't know how long I've been doing it, but it's since around 20. God, I think it might be 5 years now. It's almost 5 years I've been in this fight. When I've put my life on hold because I thought, because we've been spotting all these extraordinary things happening that are harming women and children, and gay people. I put my life on hold for fucking 5 years because I cannot deal with the silliness of it all. I can't write comedy when there's so much silly stuff actually happening in front of our eyes, and what we're describing this morning, this clusterfuck. It's like it's a living episode of The Thick of It, it's just happening in front of our eyes all the time. And my problem is I can't take notes fast enough, as I said, I'm writing something about Stonewall being part of this thing, and then they pull out. It's like, what is going on? It's like, I just find the whole kind of irrationality of it, I mean, I've found it actually maddening and kind of deranging. And when people say that I've gone mad, there's an element of truth there, because it's so insane that it can't help but make you obsessed with it. The whole, you know what I mean? It's like the whole.
I'm going to say this will so be captured and put on Twitter later. I have gone mad. Glinda admits to going insane.
Oh God, Stella!
Well, I'm going to get out ahead of it then. I'll make
Yeah, well, it's like but it is deranging, and it's because these demands, these things being demanded of us are deranging. They're deranging because of the amount of stories we've had recently of people talking about non-binary people and calling them he and she, and they're defending them. They're saying, why is it so hard to use his pronouns? So you just did it. You just didn't use his pronouns.
Grammarly.
It's mind blowing, what I just don't understand is why more people who I know, especially, haven't been coming out and saying, no, this is crazy, And I guess it's because I wonder whether we'll see them start to peek their heads out now that Stonewall are being defanged, Because I don't think they'll come back from it now. I mean, this is just ludicrous behaviour.
Well, there were quite a number of people, and I was thinking this yesterday. I think that extraordinary poll of Dawn Butler's. Did you see that?
Yes, of course I did.
Did you see that, Arty? So Dawn Butler, who is an elected MP, tweeted out a poll. Who do you trust more, Stonewall or Liz Truss? And I mean, the fact that an elected MP thinks that this is the way to gauge the public's opinion is extraordinary. And of course, the poll was it hijacked? I don't know. It was sent around, and over 90,000 people participated in it. And of course, 69.9% of people said Liz Truss.
Oh, I was so annoyed it didn't get to 70%. It was at 70% at one point, and then it just kind of trickled down.
I think we can say 70% of people.
This is
70% of 90,000. That's tens of thousands of people. Where are they?
69 now. That's
they've answered a poll, but where are their voices?
Don Butler basically wrote a poll that said, am I an idiot? And everyone said yes. Yeah. I mean, the most extraordinary thing about it is halfway through it, she tweeted, this poll's going great, almost 60,000 responses. It's like she just fucking didn't know that she was, just kind of kicked herself in the arse, It's just mind-blowing. These people are so stupid. Helen, I'm sorry. Actually, you made a point there, and I kind of...
there is the point, though, right, that all of these thousands, tens of thousands of people said Liz Truss. They knew what was going on here. They added their voice to the poll. But where are their actual voices? They're allowing a tiny group of people to actually speak out, and they're not. But they clearly believe the same as us. So where are their voices?
Yes, please. Like, Derrick Jensen wrote a piece, and he said the first person in the room, when you're on a SWAT team, the first person in the room is the one who gets the bullet. And everybody who follows in there, you have to follow in behind to protect the first person. But we're still out here. We're still out here taking the bullets, and people aren't putting their names to, people need to step up.
63,000 people. Come on. Not 63,000 voices in this fight. There isn't.
Yeah. And again, I have to add that there are people who cannot put their names to it. There are people who are, who have very good reasons. But some of you, I suspect your reasons might be a little bit not as good as you think they are.
Well, obviously, we're not talking to anyone watching here.
Yeah.
We're just talking to the general person on the street who saw this poll and was like, and have read the news, and they know what they believe, but they're not actually saying it out loud.
I tell you,
I guess it's a start, though, isn't it? I guess it's a start.
It is a start, but the other thing that to be fair to those people, the other thing we have to remember is that this whole debate is built on an extremely confusing and ever-shifting set of ideas that, like, for instance, I've never heard the same description of gender identity twice, right? It's this magical spiritual thing that everyone believes exists, but you'd never hear the same explanation twice, right? When you say trans women are women, and you say, so Eddie Izzard is the same sex as your mum, they kind of, freeze up. There is no way to talk about the issues on the ground that they have said is acceptable ground. What we need to do is make sure that the ground changes so that people know where they are. so that people, and that's what I've hoped we've been doing with this podcast, is to kind of remind people that it's okay to talk about it, it's okay to laugh about it, it's okay to make fun of it. This is an ideological position. You are not doing anything morally suspect when you're attacking an ideological position, especially one that you think is harming women, children, and gay people.
It's exactly right. And comedy and humor and levity and opening up the space for discussion is so fucking important, especially when everyone is afraid to. This is why, I wrote that essay. This is why it matters that we laugh about this and talk about it. But I think people are waiting for that. I think now that Stonewall is ripe for mockery, and there's just been every single day. This is the 6th news cycle in a row for Stonewall. It's just every day there's another piece to that. They're just not getting out of the news. Yeah. Every day. It's just turning into people can openly talk about this at the water cooler without having to risk, the little Chase Strangio in the office trying to have them fired.
Well, seriously, was Nancy Kelly working on reception before this job? I mean, there is no indication that she knows what she's doing. It's like they just kind of looked around when Ruth Hunt left and said, it's like she is a major influencer in the UK, and they are just basically running around putting out fires. It's crazy. Excuse me, that was kind of patronizing to receptionists. No offense.
It wasn't.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And all sorts. But anyway, I think the point is that she inherited the decision was already made, right? This is the direction it was going in. She's inherited it. I mean, the taking that job was ridiculous. I mean, you're a fall guy, I think.
Yes, actually, that's very true. In the way she's been set up, she sounds like one of these basically naive people who just kind of, who do that thing whenever any trans person tweets about how they're feeling sexy today, and then they've got a hairy chest and a bra on it, and it's like there's all these replies underneath saying you look amazing. It's the funniest thing. But she's like one of these people who's somehow been promoted, and and she's been left with, you're right, she's really I mean, maybe we should feel a bit of sympathy, because she has been left with a real stinker on her hands.
She took the job. She took the job. I mean, that's just how it is, isn't it? But,
But anyway, I mean, I don't know. I should say we've got a good, exciting guest in a few minutes. We're going to chat a bit longer, but we have Naomi from Legal Feminist turning up, which
excellent.
So perfect person to speak to about all this stuff, So that's good. Anything else to get in?
Yes, as a little aside, I found something that I thought was both amusing and astonishing. So a trans activist, possibly the one that complained about me saying penis too much to get me suspended from Twitter for life, is in a thread laughing at some women who believe that trans women who are on cross-sex HRT don't get erections. And so there's this prominent trans woman who argues all the time that that my question is so terrible, saying, do the gender crits really think that if you're on cross-sex HRT, you can't get an erection? I'm thinking, that's not really going to help persuade people, is it? That male sex people with a penis should be allowed to address in changing rooms with women and girls.
But that's it. It's like as soon as the torch, you cannot look at this subject for any length of time without realizing the amount of inconsistencies, the sheer power of male entitlement when it comes to this issue.
This is obviously a power play. This is to say, look, I'm going to say this anyway, and I'm still going to go on about my penis, my erection on Twitter. It's again, this idea that, I mean, it's the purposeful display of power over women, isn't it? We're going to get into your spaces and we can still get erections. I mean, that's what he's saying there.
That's what makes me so angry. And they're doing it while posing as the most vulnerable people in the world, which seems like such an insult added to injury. And they're doing it while straight people doing this, while completely taking over gay rights and harassing lesbians. It just seems like the most insidious thing that entitled, privileged, straight people who hate and resent women and lesbians are claiming to be women and lesbians, claiming to be vulnerable, claiming to be underprivileged while stomping all over everyone else. It just makes me so angry.
Lisa Nandy gave an award the other day to a trans woman named, I think it's Helen something, or I might get mixed up with Alison Bailey's opponent. Basically a trans woman. Lisa Nandy gave this trans woman an award who previously said that rapists had better manners than feminists, because at least rapists kind of validate you as female when they rape trans women. So she said they're at least a little bit more polite than rapists, was her quote. Go ahead, Helen.
No, that was right. I was trying to find it because it was the most incredible thing. I do think I'll see if I can find that.
Someone might be able
at least
to.
that we can link to it later on. It's phenomenal.
Yeah. Oh, and great news. I mean, there's so much great news. It's so incredible. It's so amazing that this is actually, we're only talking about 26 minutes in. Channel 4 have left Stonewall. That is fucking brilliant news. Because I remember when Channel 4 wrote me the letter about taking off the episode of the IT Crowd, they actually said during it, one of the reasons we're taking it off is because people might believe that Channel 4 don't think trans women are women. And I was like, no, they said they might think that the show is saying that trans women are women. I was like, yeah, I don't believe that. I don't believe that at all.
I saw somebody suggesting, and I think that this might be right, that it's possible that some of these orgs, they've left in the past year, and actually Stonewall was sort of stretching the truth a bit to say that we have these 850 orgs. I think it's possible that these were past and present that they had in their list. Either way, it's either great that they're all leaving now, or this is another lie that we have got Stonewall in.
Well, we know that the EHRC left in March, so it took them a good few months. It took them a couple of months to admit to that. So it's oh yeah. Here's another thing. I'd love to talk a little bit about this. Did you hear about Woman's Hour talking to Paris Lees? Did you hear it? Did anyone hear it?
Oh, I didn't hear it, but I've certainly read all the takes on it.
I only heard one. Oh yeah. Smanfa. My favorite. The book is hilariously written. It's like he's trying to be James Kelman, but has ended up sounding like, I don't know, just putting a tape recorder on the street and forgetting to turn it off, But but the hilarious thing is on Women's Hour, right? Women's Hour. Paris Lees says to the host, "What would you say if you introduced me at a party?" And the host says, "Well, I'd say here's a trans woman." And Paris Lees says, "Why not just woman? Why make that distinction?" And I just found it amazing that you've got Women's Hour, show for women. And there's this fucking bloke on there insisting that women do what he says and say, "No, I'm exactly the same as you. There is no difference between me and you." And women are like, "Yeah, sorry, made mistake. I'll try and do better."
It's not amazing though, is it? This is absolutely par for the course. It's exactly what I would have expected, because I think somebody was making this comparison to me earlier, a friend of mine, and I haven't really completely thought it through yet. But the transactivism, it's like the cuckoo in the nest. It has to destroy everything else. It cannot coexist.
Yes.
It has to, because that is its nature. And I think there is something in this which I think needs exploring again. But I do believe. But this is how it is. This isn't, and it's just like the charities. They will not allow the LGBA lines to coexist. They have to try and destroy it. They have to. This is their nature. They can't. It has to be complete and utter silence and complete and utter takeover.
And the reason they need to do that is because they are living in fear of someone on a TV program saying, do you believe Eddie Izzard is the same sex as your mum? They're living in fear of that, because as soon as those questions start coming out, then they will just look as stupid as they are. Listen, Naomi is waiting in our studio, so I'll bring her in without any further ado. Naomi, I see your mic is muted, so you might want to unmute that mic. I'll bring you in when that little thing disappears. Oh, it's gone. Okay, there you are. Hey, Naomi, nice to meet you.
Hello, and you.
Hello.
Thank you. Well, first of all, much congratulations on your work on Stonewall. I have a feeling that the letter writing campaign that you initiated is a lot to do with their current woes at the moment. Can you tell us a little bit about that? What you did?
Are you talking about the freedom of information requests? Yes. Well, it came about by a slightly roundabout route. I certainly didn't plan it in any detail. We were starting to set up Sex Matters, and there was a piece of writing that needed doing, that it was obviously going to be my job to write, which was the various different bits of the website saying sex matters here, there, and everywhere. Sex matters in sport, sex matters in law, and the sex matters in law bit was my job to write. So I started to write that, and that caused me to research the question of the extent to which Stonewall had got hold of our legal institutions, and my jaw dropped. I had no idea until I started to write that section for our website just how extensive and I don't like talking about capture because it sounds conspiracy theorist and alarmist and OTT, but it does feel like capture. The fact that the government legal department, the Ministry of Justice that runs the court services, the Crown Prosecution Service, either every police force in the country or almost every police force in the country, and so on and so on. All these legal institutions were paying Stonewall to lobby them. Just astonished me, and my jaw dropped. And that caused me to write the fairly long article that I put on the Legal Feminist Blog, which I called Submission and Compliance. And by the time I'd finished writing that and researching that, I was getting crosser and crosser, because it is so extraordinary.
I mean, I describe it to people as it more and more beginning to feel like a James Elroy novel. I don't know if you know James Elroy's novels, but they're basically, most of them are set in the 50s, and it's about these kind of power conspiracies that just lead to awful outcomes for people, you know, you know, the police being in league with mafia, being in league with the entertainment industry, being in league with the media. One of the things we wrote about recently,
LA Confidential, is that
LA Confidential? Yeah, that's James Elroy. One of the things we wrote about recently is that you know, judicial advice is leading to judges not only calling pedophiles by their female pronouns, but letting them off in cases and giving them shorter sentences and all this sort of thing. And the media are legally obliged to use the same pronouns as the judges, you know? So I find
it is LA Confidential. That's
do you see what I mean? Yeah. It's just all trickling down, like from one single lie that Stonewall have told everybody, it's trickling down through all of society.
Yes, and it's astonishing, and it's one of the problems, I think, that I have certainly encountered over and over again in talking to people about these subjects, is that if you tell the flat, unvarnished truth about what has been happening, people think that you're hysterical, because the flat, unvarnished truth is so surprising and so unbelievable that people think you must be making it up.
Yeah.
So you have to footnote everything and evidence everything to the nth degree, which of course we can, but you suffer a sort of attention cost in that, because, well, Submission and Compliance is a long article, and it's been very well read for an article that long, but I felt I needed to evidence everything that I said in that article really thoroughly, because it sounds so fanciful.
Yeah,
yes.
I totally agree. Totally agree.
But that's it. That's always been a problem with this. We like, for instance, something that I simply do not know why it's not the biggest scandal in the country is that Amy Challoner was at the heart of Stonewall when Stonewall were influencing over 850 organizations in the UK. Amy Challoner is married to a paedophile, was the child of a paedophile who tortured a young girl in the attic of their home. And this person has influenced Stonewall, who have influenced groups like Girl Guiding. I tried and tried for years and years and years to turn this into a story, to make people interested in the implications of this, but it just never took. People just never seemed to kind of grasp how important it was.
It's too big. When a story is that big and that shocking, it just the gears just gum up. I
guess people didn't believe it when it was coming out of the writer of Feck Drink Arse Girls, which is fair enough. But like it's still, I mean, I think that's possibly the next what's the word? The next thing to fall is people will realize what that meant. The Amy Challoner story.
Well, I think people are. I think people are beginning to realize. I mean, I think the whole reaction to Stonewall over the last few days, that poll that Dawn Butler did, like we said, there was 63,000 people who were like, yeah, no, we don't actually trust Stonewall that much. I think people are sitting up and listening now. It's still a hard slog, but I think we've got more people's attention certainly than we used to.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, you asked me a question. I've just realised I never got round to answering it. I went down a great looping digression, which was, how did the Freedom of Information campaign start?
Yes.
And it started because by the time I'd written that blog post, submission and compliance, I was so cross. I basically just launched a mass freedom of information campaign in a fit of bad temper one afternoon, having no idea, not the slightest idea about the extent to which it would take off. I just thought, damn it, they are capturing our institutions, persuading all our public bodies to pay them to be lobbied, and then setting them this humiliating, tedious open book examination on how well they've digested the lobbying and internalized it. And they're taking the piss. So let's just get this all out in the open as much as we possibly can. So let's all write freedom of information requests. And I thought maybe a few of Legal Feminist's followers would maybe do a dozen or two, and then I would finish the job by picking off some of the most important ones, like the Ministry of Justice. Yes. And 900 FOIA requests later, I was saying, blimey, where did that come from? I had no idea. And I think that tells you how many angry people there were out there who were desperate for something to do against this force. And what they were crying out for was something concrete that they could actually contribute.
So can I just ask, so we can get some background here? 900 FOIA requests. So there was a concerted campaign to get FOIA requests, I guess, from every one of Stonewall's diversity champions to get.
Yes, I mean, my initial call to action, which I did by way of a blog post on Legal Feminist, said, let's look at the whole list, which at that point was publicly on Stonewall's website, of Stonewall champions, and do a FOIA request to every single one of them that is a public authority on Schedule 1 of the Freedom of Information Act, because all the relevant public authorities are listed on Schedule 1. And I added a hashtag, don't submit to Stonewall, encouraged people to do it. That was and that became a problem with the website, whatdotheyknow.com. But the reason I put the hashtag on was I wanted to make sure that people participating in this campaign were able to check whether the public body they were thinking of sending a FOIA to had already had one, because they didn't want to cause 500 FOIA requests to be made to the same body, because that would be harassment. That would be stupid and pointless.
Yes.
So I put the hashtag on so that it would be easy to go on to whatdotheyknow.com, search for the public body you were thinking of sending a FOIA to, and if they'd already had one, choose another one and do a different one.
That's great. Yes.
And then whatdotheyknow.com got complaints and they took the hashtag off.
Right. I think it's hilarious that you did all that in a fit of anger. When I do things in a fit of anger, I end up in the newspapers. But for bad reasons. Since we have you here, Naomi, I'm going to ask for a bit of legal advice, right? A lot of us have been, and not just me, hundreds of women and dozens of women have lost financial opportunities, have lost friendships and so on, partly because of Stonewall's advice, partly because of Stonewall's intransigence. Do we have a legal case?
Sometimes, maybe, yes. In many cases where people have lost employment because of their gender critical beliefs, they will potentially have a claim for discrimination on grounds of religion or belief, because there is at least a very decent argument that gender critical beliefs are the kind of belief that is protected under the Equality Act. And that is under a question mark at the moment, because we're waiting, as I'm sure you know, we're waiting for the outcome of Maya Forstater's case.
But may I suggest, as something moving forward, we drop the word belief for us. I'm seeing it a lot. I mean, belief in a gender identity is a belief, right? But believing that there are two sexes is simply responding to the reality of the world. It's not a belief. We're often told there's more than two sexes, and the number changes again, like the description of gender identity. The number of sexes changes with every person you speak to. So this is the belief. We are actually not believers. That's what we're atheists of the gender movement. So I think this is a good point. I think Stonewall et al. Transactivism in general has very much won the linguistic war, or has done very well linguistically here. Yes.
I mean, it was a masterstroke, wasn't it, to take the somewhat unintuitive idea of a male who wants to be a woman or wants to be viewed as a woman and call them a trans woman as opposed to a trans man.
Identified male. Stuff like that.
Obviously, having the word woman in the name, it was very important, because then they could sort of use the idea of, well, trans women are women, just like every other woman. And linguistically speaking, that was a real ace.
I wonder. My legal question is also down to, like, is there a case to be made that Stonewall have committed fraud? Like they have misrepresented the Equalities Act. Nancy Kelly even did it recently on TV. She actually said that gender identity was a protected characteristic. Could someone bring a case against them for fraud? I'm going to do the classic lawyer maneuver, which is I'm not a criminal lawyer. I'm an employment specialist. Right.
So anything I say on this subject will come with that caveat. But I would have thought, in fact, even with that caveat, I would have thought a pretty clear no, because dredging for scraps of memory from when I did criminal law as an undergraduate. Fraud involves obtaining financial advantage by deception. And I don't think the fact that you were charging money for training, bits of which were misleading, I don't think that would get you anywhere near the standard for a criminal offence. Okay,
let me object. But when you think of something like the ONS, who had to spend something like 100,000 to reverse what Stonewall told them to do, what Nancy Kelly herself, who had a meeting with the ONS, I think the day before they changed their advice, that cost the taxpayer a lot of money. It's not money that was voluntarily given up. It's money that they had to pay because the law was broken. Doesn't that provide an opening for this?
I don't think it would provide an opening for fraud. I mean, I agree it's a thoroughly bad thing, and it's a reason why public bodies ought to be very wary of allowing Stonewall to influence their policies too much, because yes, it's already cost a number of public bodies quite a lot of money that they shouldn't have had to spend. But it would be a leap from there to saying that Stonewall were guilty of a criminal fraud.
Right.
So I don't think that one's going anywhere.
Okay.
Well, Dennis Kavanaugh's in the
fact,
comments, and he's talking about it could be a tort and not maybe criminal issue.
Yes, again, not my
We're
area.
working you hard, Naomi.
Yes. But I think there's also, let's wait and see what happens to Stonewall. You know, Stonewall is still there. They're still a big organization. They've still got a lot of power. But I mean, I think these freedom of information requests was just such a superb idea, because now all of this information is coming out of all of these organizations that once were diversity champions, and now they are not. And this, of course, looks great for our side, shall we say, that you know, people who were paying, or organizations that were paying, have decided not to. This is the sort of thing that I think undermines people's trust as more and more organizations sort of pull out. And I think it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next few months around Stonewall's sort of power and control.
That's right. Stonewall has more to it than just the diversity champions scheme. That's their big money maker, and that's their big racket, and that's clearly what they put all of their attention into. But they're supposed to be doing other things as well, outreach, etc. But I wonder, without the diversity champion scheme and with the humiliation of it being completely, of it not just falling apart, but it being, them just being humiliated over it, and it being attacked and lambasted as essentially, you know, a liability. What's going to be left for the rest of Stonewall? I wonder.
Yes, and also really, really sad for them, because you know, you've had people who have spent years setting Stonewall up and giving them money and being very grateful with the part that Stonewall has played in getting people's rights and recognitions. And it is such a tragedy that they've ended up here. However, you know, I think, as we've spoken about before, you know, an organization, it's past its prime, it's done its job, and now it's sort of casting its net around to try and preserve its power. Yeah,
and I think that puts you put your finger on the problem with Stonewall. For most of my adult life, I've regarded them as very much the good guys, fighting battles that needed to be fought on behalf of lesbians and gay men. And it's only since, I think, 2015 that they, as you say, were casting around for something to do, having won all their major legislative battles, which is not to say that there was nothing left for them to do. There was still homophobic bullying to be tackled. There was still plenty of work for them to do, but there weren't the big ticket legislative battles still to fight in that area, because we had equality.
LGBT Alliance has found things to do. You know, they've
exactly
objecting to homophobia that's still in places like Iran, and they've been starting campaigns to do with that sort of stuff.
Yeah, while Stonewall is literally blocking people, there are people in developing countries reaching out to Stonewall asking for help and asking for advice around homophobia, and Stonewall is like, you know, you don't abide by pronouns, see you later, you're blocked. They just don't care. So it's I don't feel too bad for the death of Stonewall. I mean, it's a bit too soon to call them dead, but because the LGBA Alliance is there. And I mean, Tish was just saying in the comments that it was Simon Fanshawe, who had been a founder of Stonewall and also was a co-founder of the LGBA Alliance, or a supporter of it right at the outset, who said, we really do need to start over because gay rights is different than it used to be. And I don't think these organizations that were set up, that bloated out with funding for legislative battles, can transform themselves into this different kind of soft homophobia, of policy, of changing, you know, of about bullying, and about, it's just a very different kind of lobbying and campaigning that we have now for gay rights that we used to have. And it just seems like these organizations don't know how to restructure. So you almost need to shut down the old ones and start up these new ones, because there's just such a different world. Homophobia in the 90s looks nothing like homophobia in the 2010s, you know? Or
Yes,
whatever
and it will be
20s. Oh God.
we have to ask legal. We have to ask more legal questions. We have Naomi only for 10 more minutes, and we're wasting it by Mr. No, I'm joking. Sorry. Sorry. I was trying to find some insult that would be funny, and I couldn't find it. I do apologize, Naomi. Do you think that Stonewall? Do you think that Mermaids entering into this as they did today is going to? My hope with it is it's going to bring more attention onto Mermaids. And have Legal Feminist been looking at Mermaids at all? I know you've been concentrating on Stonewall, but have you been looking at Mermaids and seeing what you can do on that end of things?
We haven't really, and I mean, even the question, have legal feminists been looking at, makes us sound bigger and more organized than we are. We're a small bunch of quite cross gender critical feminist lawyers, and we talk to each other. And we blog, as you know, and that's about what we are. Yes, what an extraordinary development that was today. This crowdfunder and legal action to try to overturn the Charity Commission's decision to register LGBA Alliance as a charity. I read. Sorry, just as part of this, I read, the Charity Commission, because one of the documents that they link to, the crowdfunder, is the Charity Commission's
decision, justification. Yes, decision, and in there they were already challenged, and this was only not very long ago. They were already challenged on a number of these issues, and the Charity Commission says, we've looked into these accusations or questions, and we've decided that none of them have merit and that they should be a charity. And it's basically it's the same idea again. They're like, no, I want to try again. It's like me with Twitter. Yeah. Every few months saying, no, I'm going to say it again. I want you to
yes, again. Lisa Littman's paper was the most scrutinized, I think, most scrutinized medical paper ever, study, because all these trans activists were trying to disprove it. And that just meant it got more scrutiny. It means it's more ironclad than ever. And we're seeing the same thing with LGBA Alliance. They're being more scrutinized than anyone else, but that's just proving how ironclad their position is. The more they try to attack the LGBA Alliance, the more the LGBA Alliance is going to say, come at me,
Yeah. And it's tempting. I mean, I have to say, my initial reaction to this was I was almost tempted to contribute to the crowdfunder, because bring it on. No debate doesn't go well in the courts, because you can't say no debate. You can't shout your opponent down and tell them they're bigots. You have to engage with the arguments, and that's not been going well for the other side, because we've got all the best arguments.
Old gay rights was always argue with us. We want debate so we can prove ourselves.
We want to talk.
And trans rights has always been no debate. So I love that the LGBA Alliance is bringing back the classic gay rights mantra of yes debate. Yes, we will prove ourselves. We will justify it. You can criticize us all you want, and we can take it. Just
Yes.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Naomi.
Sorry. So yes, I suppose I really quite welcome that legal action. I think it will be very, very interesting. I mean, there is a sense in which it's perfectly fair. It's a familiar part of legal processes that if you don't like the decision at first instance, you have a crack at appealing it. And I know it's slightly odd to see Mermaids as the appellant, or I'm not sure what the name of the party is, but anyway, as the party putting itself up in opposition to the Charity Commission's decision, but it doesn't seem to me wholly fanciful either, because they are very much on the other side of the debate and some of the things that LGBA Alliance are arguing against Mermaids are arguing for. So it doesn't seem wholly fanciful that Mermaids and LGBA Alliance should be having this fight between them. But fundamentally, let's have these arguments in court. And if the courts are going to impose an unexpectedly rigorous standard of demonstrable benefit, or balance between demonstrable benefit and not too much demonstrable harm before charities can be charities, then one can see potential disadvantages to that from the point of view of Mermaids and Stonewall and a number of their fellow travellers, to put it mildly.
Yes,
yeah, you're right.
It would be a very well, like we were saying, it'd be a very Pyrrhic victory for them, because as soon as, if the LGBA Alliance loses their charitable status, obviously the next thing would be that our side would bring suit against all of them. And I'm sure people would raise a great deal of money for it. And in fact, the Christian right will be pouring their money in.
Yeah, so it really does look like a heads they lose, tails they don't win situation to go into.
It really does, yes. It's an extraordinary use of money for the Good Law Project. And again, as we were saying earlier, it doesn't necessarily show the greatest of faith in their own charitable status, that instead of raising money for themselves, they're raising money to try and shut down a different charity.
Yeah.
But then there's the Good Law. I have a question about the Good Law Project. This is Jolyon Mom's baby, is that right?
Yes.
Now they're raising money essentially for themselves. Is there some conflict there, that they're raising money so that they can basically pay their own legal costs to engage in this legal battle, supposedly on the front of Mermaids? But there's something weird about Jolyon Mom fundraising for his own legal costs, essentially. You know what I mean? Like, he's going to be the barrister who's going to be receiving that money. It's going into his bank account at the end of the day for his legal work. Right?
I'm not sure that's necessarily right. I mean, exactly what their structures are. Yes, I'm not I'm not well enough up on that to pronounce on it. It's I'm troubled about the generality of the terms in which they define the fund and what they're going to do with any surplus money, which is just, I think, pursue pro-trans litigation or something of the sort, because it does seem to be very, very woolly and vague. But as to
and self-dealing, it just sounds like, but
yes, I'm not going to venture a view on that because I just haven't looked at it myself.
Dennis Kavanagh's in the comments. He said he won't be the silk. I love that term because it's like the TV shows. But
Naomi, can I ask? We have, we obviously have some high-profile cases coming up. Like Alison Bailey, unfortunately, is delayed until next year, which is a hell of a long time to wait. But Maya's coming up. I think Rosaria. Sorry, I've forgotten her name. Is it Rosaria against Rachel's case against her university? These all look like pretty. I mean, I don't want to anticipate, but these all look like pretty strong cases, don't you think? How are you feeling about the future of the legal? I mean, you seem pretty confident about getting these people into court.
Yes, my fundamental. I mean, I don't know the detail of. It's Raquel, isn't it? Rosario Sanchez.
Yes,
right,
Raquel. Sorry, Raquel.
I don't know the detail of her case, so I haven't looked at the pleadings or anything, so I don't really know very much about that one. But I have looked quite hard at Maya Forstater's case, and I think everyone who understands the relevant law, with a very small number of exceptions, mostly people who are strongly emotionally committed on the other side, take the view that it's very, very likely to go her way. It was an astonishing decision at first instance of the Employment Tribunal. It was an activist decision, essentially. It really was a case of activist lawyering from the judge. And I would be profoundly surprised if that weren't overturned on appeal.
That's great.
And I think so would pretty much everyone else I've ever spoken to about the case who understands the issues.
Yes.
So,
yes.
And in general,
the judges were giving hints that it seemed the way the questioning was going that they were seeing it that way.
I would have said the judge in the Employment Appeal Tribunal was giving very, very little away. And I couldn't read him. There was almost nothing that made me either hope or despair, but I think that's characteristic of that particular judge. But I was pretty happy with the way the argument went and feel pretty confident about the outcome. And in general, I mean, there's been the odd reverse in these cases, but I do think no debate has been a very, very clever, well-judged tactic on the other side.
Yes.
It's the best tactic if your arguments are all full of holes. Just don't have the argument. And as I said already in this programme, you can't do that in court. So in general, I'm pretty confident when these things come to court, we tend to win them because we've got all the arguments.
I've always said that. Totally if you sit someone down for 5 minutes and you force them to answer questions, you know, like in an argument, in a debate with someone, and you say you're not allowed to decline to answer a question. You're not allowed to change the subject. You're not allowed to just say, trans women or women, shut up. You have to answer every single question that is asked to you. Within 5 minutes, you will break down into a puddle of tears. You know, they just don't have arguments.
That's why I think it's another abdication of duty that the BBC haven't had a proper conversation about this on anywhere. There, you know, we are talking about a change to the language and a change to society that has massive implications, and the BBC are pretending it's just no big deal. We're just going to go ahead and start doing this. It's really disgraceful.
Yeah, and again, this is why this is what we were saying earlier. They want to shut down LGBA Alliance because that is the only tactic they have. It's the only tool in their toolbox is silencing. It's the silencing of women off Twitter or people off Twitter because you bring a decent argument, they don't want to hear it. You know, you ask them a question about the fundamentals of what is it that you're fighting for. They don't want to answer. They'd rather shut you up.
Yeah. They've been using the block button, and you know that's how they do it. You know, they've been avoiding.
I've been pleading with my profession on this. Something about 6 months ago now, I think. I wrote a blog called "I'd like to have an argument, please," saying, why won't anyone talk to me about this? And is there any practice? I think I said any practicing or academic lawyer in the UK or with credible connections to the UK who is willing to enter into a relaxed, friendly, amiable email debate over a period of weeks or months with me, with a view to publication at some point in the future if we're both comfortable with that. Dead silence. And I managed to give that quite a lot of circulation in the end. I wrote a follow-up blog post called "The Curious Incident of the Lawyers Who Wouldn't Argue," because in general, lawyers are argumentative. You know, and not just in court. Lawyers around their dinner tables, lawyers in their rooms and chambers. Lawyers are argumentative. It's odd to find a subject on which your fellow lawyers just won't talk to you and won't take you on, won't tell you why they think you're wrong. And on this subject, no one will have this conversation with me. And, you know, I'm an okay lawyer, but I'm not the greatest lawyer on the planet. There are plenty faster and cleverer than me who on many subjects could run rings around me and tie me in knots. On this subject, they're not to be seen for dust. And that's not because I'm brilliant or scary. It's because they know that all their arguments are nonsense.
That's absolutely.
Or that they would actually have to come out on your side and they would rather stay silent.
I think that's actually, a very important factor there. A lot of people do agree and are just terrified. So I don't know. Look, hopefully with the undermining of Stonewall, you know, that'll change and people will begin to be a bit braver. Can I ask, to round up, Naomi, can I just ask, is there something, and you can just mention links or anything like that, you don't have to be specific, but are there other things that ordinary people can do, maybe some of the people who are watching this program, to challenge the orthodoxy in their place of work, or with the organization that they're part of? What can people do while staying safe to fight back against what's happening?
Well, I'm going to plug the organisation that I'm part of, perhaps predictably. Sex Matters is a tiny little startup at the moment. I'm immensely proud and privileged to be involved in it. I think we are already punching way above our weight. We desperately need to gear up and get into a position to employ. At the moment, we have no paid staff. All the work is being done for nothing, and that's unsustainable. So we desperately need to raise funds for a full-time staff, starting with 1, but probably going up to 2, 3, maybe 4. We're not going to turn into anything Stonewall size. But we do have ambition, and I think we're already seeing some of the results of that. And I'm put in mind in terms of the sheer efficiency of the organisation. Years and years ago, I used to work for a little organisation called the Free Representation, a little charity called the Free Representation Unit, which held student lawyers' hands when they did their very first pro bono work for clients in employment tribunals and social security appeals. And I used to be hugely enthusiastic about that organisation. I still am, actually. It's still there and it's still doing great work. And I have a similar feeling about Sex Matters. This is a little, small, light, fast, responsive, and amazingly efficient and effective little organisation. And send us money, obviously, is one thing, but also
you have ways of doing so. I presume there's a link on your blog. We'll link to
and actually almost more importantly than that, because I know people want to do things, they want to do practical things to help with this movement. Sign up to the website and sign up to get our regular email newsletters and calls to action. And from time to time, we will ask you to do things like writing letters, like responding to consultations, like emailing people and so on, and like the FOIA campaign. Yes. Or like helping crunch the data from the FOIA campaign, because in a sense we're victims of our own success there. We've got a huge pile of data and we're nowhere near the end of the task of crunching through it and drawing conclusions from it. So there's an awful lot to be done and we need people's help, and they can sign up. That doesn't have to be a public act. That's very safe. They can do public things for us if they feel able to, but they don't have to.
Well, I think that's a brilliant way to centralize the fight back against all this stuff. So we will put that link into the description underneath the video with gusto. So Naomi, thank you so much. Will you please come back on anytime you want us to help with anything or talk about anything? Because it's absolutely fascinating talking to you, and I don't think I got through all my questions. I got about 20 more. So
look forward to the next time.
Good, excellent. Keep up the good work and see you soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. You too.
Bye, Naomi.
Bye.
Oh, and can I say, because I've been dwelling on it, that receptionist joke, I do apologize. It was very sexist and mean to receptionists. I have had some wonderful times with receptionists, as they were the only people who would speak to the comedy writers when I was writing TV. So that was a great one. I really enjoyed that. That was fast.
Yes. Sex Matters. What a brilliant organisation. They're doing some amazing work. And as Naomi was saying, they're very small. But it does mean that they're sort of fast and super responsive, and how superb and how brilliant that they're prepared to come on here and talk about the work that they're doing.
Every day we're so lucky to have these people on our show. These are extraordinary people.
Yeah, it's great.
And smart, so smart. This is the other thing about the side of the arguments is the side of the smart people.
Yeah. As we always say,
and entrepreneurial and just so principled. It's
whenever
brilliant.
I speak to people who've been cancelled, who are smaller, who are not as big a name, and I always tell them the same thing that people told me when it happened to me, which is welcome to the better friends part of your life, And it's I've just met so many incredibly brave and smart people who are, it's a resistance movement. And it's just been, an honor to be involved in it,
Yes, and again, the same with everyone in the comments. People who turn up every week and their comments are spot on. They're funny, really interesting and supportive. It's just brilliant. It's just like having an excellent dinner party.
Yeah. And speaking of brilliant, brave people who are in the comments, I just wanted to mention a comment. Tess of the Turfervilles. Love you, Tess. She pointed out, speaking of Jolly on Mom and my question about the Good Law Project, she seems to be under the impression that he is the single sole shareholder. of the Good Law Project when she looked into it. So
okay, that's interesting.
Well, that's interesting.
There's something interesting there that
Yes.
I wonder if someone wants to look into that, if there's some strange self-dealing going on, that they're raising all this money for legal stuff, but it's just going to themselves, you know? I don't know.
Yeah.
Something fishy.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Well, I think well, we're not making any accusations, but it would be good to know, wouldn't it?
Yeah, we're not making accusations, but there's something going on when it just seems weird when you're talking about fighting for all these fights, but the money is going to your business, essentially, your employment, you know? Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Oh God, can I talk about that? No, I'm just going to be mysterious, but I think we got big news that's been coming up about a certain troll. Can't say anything more than that, but keep an eye on my Substack. There'll be something coming soon. Yes. There was one other thing I was going to say. Something about the quality of people. What was it? No, I can't remember. Anyway, that's it. I guess that's it for another week from Radio Free Europe. Lovely to join you all again, and God bless you, and see you next week, or if not sooner.
Or it depends what happens on the weekend.
By tomorrow, we'll be having another one. I'll see you guys in 3 hours. We're doing another emergency mess.
See you in the future.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Have a great weekend, or whatever day of the week it is. I have no idea.